Just thought I'd shoot a quick video on a Pro X case I've just finished for the Denon Prime Go. This case I purchased out of the US. Unfortunately, they're not available here in Australia. It's a generic case as such, and there are other derivatives with different colours and different patterns. But I did choose this particular Pro X case because I did want the all black, and I do like the hex pattern that'll match up with some of my other Rogue cases. So we'll go around to the actual back of the case and I'll show you all the connectors that I've put on there. So what we've done here is pretty much replicated all the ports on the back of the Denon Prime Go. We've got the master outputs from the Denon Prime Go. These are the booth outputs. Now on the Denon Prime Go, they are 1/4 inch TRS jacks, but I've converted those to XLRs. It just makes things a lot easier. Also on the Denon Prime Go, you do have RCA master outputs, and I've converted that to a 3.5mm socket there. They're all Neutrik output connectors, the XLRs, and I believe this one here is a Soundcraft. Very hard to find. It took about 3 weeks to get that out of the States. We move across the other side. We got the RCA inputs right here, which basically go into a little passive mixer, which I'll show you on the inside. Then we've got the Ethernet port right there. That's a Cat6 Ethernet port, and we've also replicated there the USB port, the USB-B port on the back of the Denon Prime Go, and the obligatory on all my road cases is the Neutrik PowerCon. And what we've got on the side here is also a power socket. It's an Australian New Zealand power socket there with a switch, and that basically comes from the PowerCon directly into there. They're the only external modifications on the outside. The greatest challenge here was actually lining up all the connectors. They are screws rather than bolts with nuts, which means as you do screw them in, they tend to move around a little bit. It took me a day or so to get them all lined up as best that I possibly could. So that is the outside of the case, and we'll show you what's on the inside. So what we've done right here is completely customize the entire case. The case itself, when you do get it, it does come with the foam inserts to support the actual Prime Go. However, this particular piece goes all the way to the back, and what I've done there is I've actually cut it down to accommodate a hinge, and I've put a hinge panel there. So I'll run through all the connections here. So basically this is a PowerCon in. That's the power coming into the case. From the actual PowerCon, it goes into a power outlet or a power point, and then the wiring is then split towards the Prime Go power supply. The next one here is the USB-B connection on the back of the Prime Go. So eventually, if Denon decide to give us integration into, say, Virtual DJ or Serato, that would be the way to connect. I'm assuming that would be also the way you could update the Prime Go, but I think from version 1.61 you're actually able to upgrade the firmware directly from the unit itself via Wi-Fi, so I'm not too sure, but I did put a port in there nonetheless. And the next one here is the Ethernet port, or what Denon calls the link port. My understanding with that is it is either for Ethernet for internet. I'm not too sure actually. I need to read up on that one there, but it also, there's a protocol there to be able to control your lighting via a separate controller, so I did connect up the Ethernet port. Right next to that we've got two RCAs. They're the inputs that plug directly into the back of the Prime Go, for obviously an auxiliary input. We'll talk about the mixer a little later. This one here is what I've done there is the Prime Go actually has a RCA output, a master output, so that's that there, but I've actually converted that to a 3.5mm headphone jack. Then we have the outputs for the booth output, and these ones here are the masters. On the booth, what I've done is we've gone balanced TRS, 6.5mm. One is a right angle and one is a conventional socket, and there's a reason for that, and that comes down to spacing in the back. And when I put the unit in, that'll all make sense. And obviously we have the master outputs, and they're on angled Neutrik XLRs. As we move towards the front of the case, what I've done here, I've also installed a Bluetooth receiver and transmitter. I'm always been an advocate of having a Bluetooth receiver built into the case. Quite often we have performers that come in and they want to connect, so rather than using long lengthy cables and then limiting their use or their control of their product, what we do is we ask them to log into the Bluetooth. If it's an Apple device, it generally gives about 5 to sort of 6 meters of range before it starts to get a little flaky. But if they're running on Android devices, and if they're running particularly the aptX protocol or Bluetooth 5, this one here will support both aptX HD and aptX low latency. The low latency there gives you 20 milliseconds, which is brilliant. So when I'm using it in a transmitter mode, I'm actually able to use Bluetooth headphones for DJing. And I'll probably talk about that in another video, but it does work remarkably well. The HD mode does give you better quality at the expense of latency. So from low latency mode, I think it gives you 20 milliseconds. If you go to aptX HD, it gives you 200 milliseconds, which is not ideal. It's a very noticeable difference. So I generally use it in receiver mode, but it definitely worth an addition into your road case. What we have here is the power bank. This is a very unique power bank in the sense that it allows you to power up a laptop. So the Denon Prime Go runs on 19 volts and I believe it's 3.7 amps it draws in current. So the way I've wired this is basically comes into the Denon power supply, and then it comes out into a DC splitter. So what I've done is I've actually just plug that in there, and I put a bit of heat shrink over the top to keep it in place, and then that there effectively splits the signal, or splits the actual voltage, and it goes into here, and that charges. But the other side of it actually goes into a socket here. I've got to find it. There it is, just hiding there. That there, and that plugs into the back of the actual Prime Go. Now, the unique advantage here is when you connect it to mains power or to 240 volt, this will actually power the Prime Go, and it will also charge this at the same time. By sheer chance, I worked out that this is not only an output, but it's also an input. Via input, that will actually charge the power bank as well as powering up the Prime Go. If I don't have access to mains power, I flick a switch on the side here, and it will power up, and it will give me 19 volts into the Prime Go. So effectively what that does is it extends the battery life in the Prime Go by about 4 hours. So give or take, the Prime Go would give you about 4 hours of battery charge in use. I'm averaging between 3.5 to 4 hours with this power bank, as well as powering the Prime Go and powering the Bluetooth transmitter and receiver. I'm effectively extending that range by another 4 hours, so it gives you 8 hours in total. Absolutely brilliant. What I did here is the Prime Go only has one auxiliary input. So what I want to do is we'll have a minimum of 2. This will actually accommodate 4 inputs, and it gives you a master output. Now this is passive, it does not require any power. And for packaging purposes, I had to mount it in such a way because I didn't have any space to mount it anywhere else. So effectively what I've done, I've used channels 2 and 4 as inputs, and then the master out goes into these RCAs, which plug directly into the back of the auxiliary input on the Prime Go. And then obviously one of those inputs is from the Bluetooth receiver, and the other input is from the RCAs going into that connection right there. So this panel here started life as a 2-unit rack panel, a blanking rack panel. Unfortunately, it did not fit, so I had to cut it down from 88mm down to about 72 to 73 millimeters. Hence the reason why I've left the lip on that side, just to keep it dressy and nice, and so when you actually close it. And then I've cut it down on this side here, and then all the connections are on the back. This has probably been the trickiest part of the whole build, where I've had to find all sorts of adapters to clear all the connections on the back, and that eventually will sit down. And I've got a little handle on the other side there to be able to lift it. I'm just waiting on some magnets to arrive there, which will be attached right here, and that'll keep the actual lid in place. So what I've done here, I've actually built some custom brackets, and what they are, they just come on a strip, and then you just bend them in shape and just hit them with some black spray paint. You keep that in place, they're not going anywhere. Everything's firmly mounted inside. This is actually a push fit. What I've done is I've cut the foam, I've switched it on again, and that just slides directly in there and just holds it in place. So that, luckily enough, I didn't have to cut anything there, or sorry, I didn't have to screw that down. That sits perfectly as it is. So that's the inside of the case. Tried to keep it as neat as possible, but unfortunately, without having to cut the output wires and trim them down, that's the best that I could do. Okay, so as we take off the lid, just before I show you the unit itself from this side round, what I actually did to the lid, the Pro X case itself only comes with a trim panel on the inside, but I did add this 1 inch thick 25mm, they call it acoustic foam, but it's more like corrugated foam, and that with the deck saver in place on the unit itself works perfectly to hold it in the case. Doesn't move around at all. As we remove the deck saver, it's just another added layer of protection, and at events, if I need to step away from the booth, I can just put that on top. So what we've added here on the hinge panel is an XLR connector. I typically use a gooseneck microphone, like a flexible gooseneck microphone with a dynamic mic on there, and then this here is a replication of the USB port on the back of the Prime Go for your hard drives, thumb drives, USBs, and then the second mic input is there for a little Sennheiser receiver, which work absolutely brilliantly as a wireless microphone, and that's just removable, and it exposes there the little 3-pin XLR, and that there can be put into a bag, or we can leave it inside the case. It doesn't move around at all, to be honest. And then we've got a little knob here, and then when you lift the actual panel, we come around and we expose what's in the back. So that's it there. And then down the front here, obviously we have the removable panel at the front, and then we got access there to the power bank, and then there's little antennas, which I'll just show you how they flip up. Generally what you do is you reach under there, and of course you just pull them out like that, and even in that position there, they don't interfere. You can still close the lid. There's plenty of clearance for the Bluetooth receiver antennas, and yeah, so no modifications there as such. Just cleaned it all up, and then we added the hinge panel, and that cleans it all up really nicely in the back. Just also, if you can see here, as we switch on, if I activate the power bank down here, right, you'll see the little battery charger light come on there. And then what we do is we lift the panel up, and that actually stays up on its own, and we reach around, hold the button down, and we close the panel. I'm hoping at some stage Denon is going to add some EQ for the microphones. I think that's the only feature that's missing from here. I can work with the limitations of only having the one input now that I've got the little passive mixer in the back, and that gives me 2 additional inputs, well, up to 4 if I needed to go as far as that, but really I only ever need 1 or 2, and then I'm able to control the actual level from the front of the unit there under the auxiliary. So as far as further upgrades, I think this serves its purpose. I'm trying to keep it as lightweight as I possibly can. I could have added a wireless microphone receiver into the case, but it kind of defeats the purpose. This is primarily like a backup unit, although given how it's turned out, I may even use this as a main unit. I really don't see any limitations with this outside of having EQ on the microphone channels and having EQ on the auxiliary input. That's kind of workable. I can work around that for smaller events. And with the added power bank there, it ups the runtime from 4 hours or just under 4 hours to just over 8 hours. So the actual battery power bank, it's 20,000 milliamp hour. Any questions, just hit me up on the in the comment section and I'll get back to you. And hopefully I'll be shooting some more videos with my other customized cases. This is probably the simplest one I've ever done. Some of my other cases are far more complex than this one here, but I'm quite happy with the way it turned out. Just particularly this little rear panel here that covers up all the wiring in the back, and it looks really neat and presentable. Anyway guys, thanks for watching.